right. Well, welcome. It's good to have you. You know, I'm always a little nervous when September rolls around and the weather starts changing, and I come to Bozeman because it reminds me of being a freshman, and I was real nervous about that. I feel like I'm already skipping class. Ron Marlene was here. Where'd he go? He bailed out already? He went inside? Hi, Cindy. It's always a pleasure to have Ron. He was kind enough to hire me when Jan decided she wanted to go to law school. She got accepted to George Washington University in Washington, D.C., and I didn't have a job, of course, because you can't really ranch in Missoula or wherever else if that's your business. And so I called up Ron Marlene, and he was kind enough to hire me, and I got a chance to go back to Washington. So he was kind of my first boss and mentor, and I always appreciate Ron Marlene. And Cindy, thanks for being here as well. I always remember I staffed the Interior Committee for him. It's now called Resources, and Mo Udall was the chairman, and Mo had this famous line that everybody quotes since then, and when the debate gets a little long on the House floor, Mo Udall stood up and said, well, everything that can be said about this issue has been said, it just hasn't been said by everybody yet. So when I'm the last speaker, I always feel like everything that can be said has, just everybody hasn't said it yet. Webb, thank you. I'd like to borrow your sunglasses while you're standing there. Rob, Don, and Don, it's always easy when they have the same name. I'm proud to stand up with these guys. I haven't just been a supporter of the Chamber of Commerce for the last 11 years. That just happens to be while I was in Washington, D.C. as your United States Congressman. Shortly after I got back to Billings, when Jan graduated in 1983, I took over the ranch and I immediately joined the Billings Chamber of Commerce. Why? I didn't want to just be a supporter of small business. I wanted to be an advocate. So I joined the Legislative Affairs Committee, imagine that, huh? And got active in paying attention to what was going on up in Helena and Washington, D.C. But it's one of the reasons I ran for the legislature in the first place, is I came to the conclusion that there were those in Helena that did not necessarily understand in small business it's not one tax and it's not one regulation. It's the cumulative effect of all the taxes and all the regulations at the local, the county, the state, and the federal level. And by the time they pile all that on you, you as a businessman could not move. And being in the cattle business, one fee increase or one tax increase cannot be passed along because we at the local level don't establish the price of cattle. It's national and international. So it becomes an expense. It becomes a burden. It limits our ability to make money for our family, to raise our kids the way we want to be able to put them into the school of their choice and that. And so one of the reasons I've been traveling around Montana, over the course of August, I hit 33 counties, and we had little rallies. And the reason for the rallies were Washington, D.C. was talking about, in New York City, Occupy Wall Street. Well, that's not the real solution. The real solution, we think, is small business. And so we struck out on this tour called Liberate Main Street. That's what it's all about. And Ronald Reagan said it best in 1979 when he was running against Jimmy Carter. He said, this guy over here, Jimmy Carter, and his administration stands for, if it moves, tax it. If it still moves, regulate it. And when it finally quits moving, subsidize it. Sound like today? Sound like this president? Sound like this democratically controlled U.S. Senate? We changed the House. What we need to do to turn this economy around is not a government solution. It's not the failed stimulus. It's to give tax certainty to our small businesses, to get the regulatory environment so it's not punishment-based. The regulations are there to help, not hurt, not hinder. And when you talk to businesses throughout Montana, if you have town hall meetings and you invite businesses and you ask them what's your #1 issue or concern, they will tell you it's uncertainty. We don't know what the climate's going to be like in January of 2013. As this fiscal cliff you keep hearing about enters into the equation, whether it's the expiration of the tax relief or whether it's the sequestration that's likely to occur, whether it's the implementation of Obamacare, which really kicks into gear in high in 2014, it's the uncertainty of the environment that is keeping the businesses of America and Montana sitting on their wallets, not investing, and having a difficult time borrowing money because of the Dodd-Frank financial reforms that was supposed to get at the big banks in New York City and is having an effect on your local community banks in Bozeman, Montana. And you don't have to take my word for it. Go down and talk to your local bankers. So I haven't been just a supporter of the chamber for the last 11 years. I am an advocate for the philosophy of business turning this economy around. And that's why I work so hard every year to earn the respect and confidence of the U.S. Chamber, the state chamber, and the local chambers, because they represent you, the job creators, the people that are in fact going to build a more secure future for the people of America. And I think they have a clear understanding of their membership that we need a well-rounded, comprehensive energy policy that doesn't pick and choose winners and losers, that have a clear understanding that in many cases things like the tax structure is an impediment, and that we ought to have permanency. The death tax. Why would you have a death tax? You know, if you're going to enrich yourself on the inheritance and sell it off, you're going to pay a capital gains tax. You're going to pay an income tax. Why do they feel compelled to redistribute the business, especially if you don't have the ability because you don't have the cash to pay it, and you've got a time frame that's starting to affect you, and then you start managing your business based upon your taxes as opposed to managing it on the best behalf of your business and your community. Those kinds of issues in Washington just baffle me. I don't understand where there's this resistance to want to separate the death tax from all other issues like the Senate did, and the danger of it going back to 55% on January 1. Those kinds of decisions are what Americans are saying, what are you thinking back there? Or Obamacare. You know, one of the things that we need to talk about, besides the fact that they took over $700 billion out of Medicare, which is a problem in and of itself, to set up new entitlements in Obamacare. In 2014, 2 new entitlements are being created that do not exist today. How crazy is that? We're having problems with Social Security, we're having problems with Medicare, and they're creating 2 new entitlements. What are they? The expansion of Medicaid and the insurance premium subsidy. Nobody's on them now. Not a single American is affected by that. They don't go into place in 2014, and you know what the cost is? Over the next 10 years, $1.4 trillion. Now, if the American public was given a choice, do you want to create 2 new entitlements when you're having problems with Social Security and Medicare already, or do you want to wait and do something different and not do that? I think 80% of the people, at least in America, would say, are you guys crazy? Why are you creating 2 new entitlements? That doesn't make sense. And yet, that's in Obamacare as we speak. That's why it's important to change the Senate. Keep in mind, if John Tester is elected, there's a pretty good chance it's going to be implemented. He is not going to vote to repeal Obamacare because he's got skin in the game. He's part of the problem of having created it in the first place. Something that, frankly, I think is destined to fail anyhow. So ultimately, if you want to change the direction of the country, support me. You've got a clear choice, a clear contrast of philosophies. A person who voted for a failed stimulus, voted for the increased spending, voted to raise the debt ceiling, voted to bail out Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and voted for Obamacare. In fact, voted with Barack Obama 95% of the time, or me, who believe that we're headed off in the wrong direction. The solution is these guys. The solution is the chamber and the business creators and the small businesses throughout America and Montana and Gallatin County. You guys are the solution. Don Cape is the solution. This is what we strive for, we think of on a daily basis. Taxation, regulation, and litigation, frankly. There were 3 groups that elected John Tester and Barack Obama. Environmentalists. They wanted cap and trade. We said, an energy tax is not very smart. Not only will we be paying more for our energy, it hurts our economy in Montana because we have a large contingency of people in Montana and revenue coming into the state that comes from oil, gas, and coal. Why would you want an energy tax? And so what are they doing? They're trying to write regulations in EPA as we speak to implement the energy tax for cap and trade. Trial lawyers, second group. How were they rewarded for their support of the president and John Tester? They were left out of Obamacare. Defensive medicine was not even touched. There's a pilot project, but you go out and talk to your doctors, your hospital administrators, your hospital board members, and they will tell you defensive medicine occurs right here in Bozeman, Montana. And labor unions. How were they rewarded? Well, they wanted a card check. They wanted to do away with the secret ballot. What's happening right now within the Department of Labor, they're crafting regulations on e-card check and on snap elections and on posting and on micro unions. Agencies have got them up. As I travel around and talk to small businesses about things like OSHA and MSHA. MSHA is mine safety. OSHA, of course, is occupational. The whole reason for their existence is to try and help small businesses have a safer work environment for their employees, working in a partnership, not in an adversarial role. And if you talk to mine companies, or if you talk to the employees of the miners, like in Troy, or if you talk to the small businesses, this administration has turned them into a punishment-based instead of incentive-based kind of regulatory environment. That's not what we need or want in this country. We need to have government working with business, not becoming the impediment to small business being able to expand and grow. So thank you, guys. Thank you so much for your endorsement. I really appreciate it. Thank you all.